Factories are quiet at night, until they're not. When the lights flicker and footsteps echo from the dark, you start to wonder if you're really alone. Story 1. The first thing that gets you is the silence. Not a true silence, of course. There's always the low-frequency hum of the industrial lighting, the distant groan of the building settling, the whir of a ventilation fan kicking in somewhere in the cavernous dark. But it's a human silence. And when you're one of only 2 people in a warehouse the size of an aircraft hangar, that silence has weight. My shift at Apex Fulfillment starts at 10 p.m. It's me, Leo, and an old-timer named Dave who mostly stays in the security office, his face illuminated by the bank of monitors. My job is simple: walk the floor, scan for misplaced inventory, and make sure everything is where the day shift left it. For the first few weeks, it was just a boring, quiet job. Then the building started to play tricks. It began with sound. A sharp thump from aisle 14, like a heavy box being dropped from a few feet up. I'd grab my flashlight, the beam cutting a nervous cone through the gloom, and walk the length of the aisle. Nothing. Every box would be perfectly stacked on shelves that soared 50 feet into an oppressive, unseen ceiling. I'd radio Dave. "Anything on camera in aisle 14, Dave?" A crackle, then his gravelly voice. "Negative, kid. Just you. Probably a rat the size of a cat. We got him, I'd accept it." It was easier to believe in giant rats than the alternative. Then came the motion sensors. We have lights that only turn on when they detect movement, a cost-saving measure. One night, I was working in Section C when the lights at the far end of Section A, a good 100 yards away, flickered on. Aisle by aisle, they illuminated in a slow, deliberate march, a wave of cold white light washing through the deserted rows, straight towards the loading bay doors. Then, just as suddenly, they winked out, plunging the section back into darkness. "Dave, you seeing this?" I asked, my voice tight. "Seeing what?" "The lights in A. They just turned on and off in sequence." A long pause. "Probably a short, kid. Faulty wiring. I'll log it for maintenance." He was always so quick with an explanation. Faulty wiring, settling foundations, big rats. But I started noticing things. A pocket of cold air in an otherwise stuffy corner, so cold my breath would fog. The feeling of being watched, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up, only to turn and find nothing but endless rows of cardboard and steel. The worst night was last Tuesday. Dave called me to the security office. He looked pale, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by a quiet, anxious energy. He didn't say anything, just pointed at a monitor. "Watch," he rasped. He rewound the footage from camera 27, pointed down aisle 9. It was empty, grainy in the low-light black and white. He played it. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then, on the far right of the screen, something shifted. It wasn't a person. It was a smudge, a flicker in the digital noise that moved with a purpose the static didn't have. It slid from behind one of the support beams, a shape that was somehow too tall, too thin. It didn't walk. It drifted, flowing over the concrete floor for a few feet before melting back into the shadows of a shelving unit. It was there for no more than 3 seconds. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. "What was that?" Dave didn't look at me. He just kept staring at the screen. "I've been working nights here for 15 years. You see things. You hear things. Most of it, you write off. Faulty wiring, you know?" He finally turned to me, his eyes wide and serious. "But sometimes you can't." About 10 years back, a temp got his arm caught in one of the conveyor belts right at the end of aisle 9. They didn't find him for hours. We sat in silence, the only sound the hum of the computers. He didn't have to say anything else. I got it. Now the silence doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels occupied. When I walk the floor, I don't just listen for the creaks of the building. I listen for the sounds underneath them. A soft scraping, a faint, breathy whisper that's almost lost in the whir of the fans. I find myself talking out loud, just to break the tension. "Just checking inventory," I'll say to the empty air, my voice sounding small and pathetic. Last night, I was doing a final sweep when I heard it. A voice, clear as day, right behind me. It wasn't loud, just a soft, melancholic whisper that said a single word. Cold. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't turn around. I just stood there, paralyzed in the middle of a cavernous tomb of retail goods, and waited. After a long moment, I forced myself to move, walking quickly, not running, back to the light of the security office. I didn't tell Dave. Some things you don't log. Some things you just learn to live with. Clocking in every night and praying you're still the only one there when you clock out. Story 2. There's a unique kind of silence that falls over a warehouse after midnight. It's not a true silence, not the dead quiet of a forgotten place. It's a silence made of 1,000 tiny noises you'd never notice during the day. The electric hum of the fluorescent lights, the groaning sigh of the building settling, the distant rhythmic whir of a ventilation fan. For the first few months, these were the sounds of my world at the Omnicorp distribution center. My partner on the floor is Frank, a man who seems to have been born under the harsh glare of industrial lighting. He's been here 15 years. He moves his forklift with a languid, practiced ease, his face a permanent mask of weary indifference. The first time it happened, it was just a sound, a soft, scraping noise from aisle 14. I was at the packing station, taping up a box. Frank was on his break. The sound was distinct, like a heavy cardboard box being dragged across the concrete, but slowly, hesitantly. "Frank, you back?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the cavernous space. No reply. The scraping stopped. I shrugged it off. A rat, maybe. A big one. A week later, it was the motion sensors. We have lights that flicker on aisle by aisle as the forklifts move through. A cost-saving measure that turns the vast, shadowed warehouse into a rolling wave of illumination. I was in the office, logging a shipment, when I saw it on the monitor bank. Aisle 9, right at the far end, lit up. Then aisle 10, then 11. A slow, deliberate progression. No forklift, no person, just a creeping line of light moving towards the loading bay. I pointed. "Frank, you see that?" He glanced up from his lukewarm coffee, his eyes barely registering the screen. "Faulty wiring. Does it all the time. The cold messes with the sensors." He took a sip and turned back to his crossword puzzle. His explanation made sense. It was logical. But I had walked those aisles an hour before, and the air had been still and dead. The feeling of being watched started after that. It was a physical sensation, a prickling on my neck when my back was to one of the long, dark aisles. I'd whip my head around, expecting to see Frank, but there would be nothing but towering shelves of identical brown boxes, disappearing into the gloom above. The shadows in this place are deep, dark things. They play tricks on you. Sometimes, in my peripheral vision, I'd swear a shadow detached itself from a stack of pallets and slid into another. But when I'd look directly, it was gone. The real shift happened last Tuesday. Frank was out sick, his first sick day in 3 years. He'd grumbled on the phone. I was alone. The silence was different that night, heavier. The usual hums and whirs seemed muted, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Around 3 a.m., I was doing a stock check in the electronics section, aisle 22. It's the highest value section, so it has more cameras. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It was faint, just a sibilant hiss on the edge of hearing, like the tail end of a sentence. It sounded like it came from right behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. The aisle was empty, a long, perfect corridor of stacked televisions and computer monitors. "Hello?" I said, my voice sounding small and foolish. The only reply was the buzz of the overhead light. My hand was shaking as I pulled out my phone and accessed the live security feed. I pointed the phone's camera at the aisle I was in, then looked at the feed from the security camera mounted on the ceiling. On my phone screen, I saw myself, a lone figure in a high-vis jacket, staring down an empty aisle. But on the security feed, the one from the high angle, there was a flicker. For a single stuttering frame, as the low-quality video refreshed, the shadow cast by a pallet of goods near the far end of the aisle was wrong. It was too long. And it had a head. I blinked, and the next frame was normal. I rewound the footage, scrubbing back and forth. It was there. Then it wasn't. A glitch. A compression artifact. It had to be. I packed up my scanner and started walking, fast, back toward the relative safety of the brightly lit office. As I passed the entrance to aisle 19, a cold draft hit me, carrying a sound that froze me in place. It was a voice, clearer this time. A low murmur, coming from the darkness of the aisle. It wasn't just one voice. It was two. A soft, conversational back and forth. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was unmistakable. They were just talking. I stood there, hidden by the aisle shelving, listening to two people have a calm, quiet conversation in a pitch-black, empty section of a locked warehouse, miles from anywhere. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a faulty sensor or a rat. This wasn't a trick of the light. I didn't go down that aisle. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the black opening, and spent the rest of my shift in the office, watching the monitors, my gaze jumping at every flicker. The whispering stopped. The lights behaved. Frank is back tonight. He's grumbling about the faulty wiring in aisle 9 again. I haven't told him what I heard. He'd just say it was the wind in the vents. But I know what I heard. And every time I walk the floor now, I don't look into the shadows anymore. I'm too afraid of what might look back. The worst part isn't the noises. It's the silence that follows, when you know you're not alone, and you know that whatever is with you has decided, for now, to be quiet.